Welcome to another episode of On Patrol with the Suffolk County PBA. I'm CJ Hunter, the treasurer of the PBA.
I'm Tanner Brandemeier, the sergeant at arms of the PBA.
And today we're excited to have Kevin McCaffrey on. Kevin's one of the Suffolk County legislators, and he's actually the presiding officer of the legislature.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, Kev, tell us a little bit about your background in politics. What sort of led you to this life in public service you're living, and ultimately a leadership role as presiding officer?
Yeah, I hate to admit it, but it was kind of accidental. And you talk to a lot of people, they kind of fall into this business.
Right.
And so what happened is I got married in 1984. Me and my wife moved to Lindenhurst. I grew up in Massapequa, and we said, let's try living out here. We did. We bought a house. We happened to move in next to the vice president of the Civic Association, and he was like, "Oh, you have to come to the Civic Association meetings." And my wife was really excited about it. "Oh, let's go!" And so we went. I stood in the back of the room with all the other husbands that didn't want to be there, and she was meeting new friends and everything else. "Oh, this is great." She becomes the recording secretary of the Civic Association, moving forward. And one day she becomes pregnant with my son, and she goes, "I'm not feeling that well. Can you go and take the minutes of the meeting?" Sure. Before I know it, I was the president of the Civic Association. And then in the Village of Lindenhurst, where we're living in, they're the only village that still runs as Republicans, Democrats. Now, my family had been involved in Republican politics in Oyster Bay. My uncle was a state Supreme Court judge, and so my whole family was involved in this stuff. They knew it, and so they said, "Why don't you get involved? We're trying to do this." Unseat a 16-year incumbent. And I said, sure. So I got involved in the campaign, and we beat him. And 2 years later, they asked me to run for the village board. I had a kind of parallel career going on the union side. I was a truck driver. I'd gone to school, and so I become the shop steward. Same thing. Nobody else wanted the job, and so I'll take it, and I did. And at the time came, they were trying to unseat in 1994, unseat some one of the incumbents or a whole group of incumbents that really weren't doing a good job. They were the reform candidates, came in, we're going to change the world, and they found out that they couldn't. And so they brought us back in. They wanted a fresh face. They wanted somebody that, had some college. And now I also was an elected official in the village. We run for office. We win by a few hundred votes. I become the secretary treasurer, which is the number 2 spot. In 2000, the president retires, so I take over that role. And I've been the president of Local 707 since then, and currently am. In the meantime, I was continuing on the village board, and for until 2013. At the last minute, one of the candidates on the Democratic side dropped out. They asked me if I wanted to run. So I had 2 hours to decide, spoke to my wife. She said, go ahead. And so we did. And I ran for office in 2013 and have been successful ever since.
Well, I find it interesting that you kind of just fell into it accidentally, right?
Yeah.
And we had Jesse Garcia on recently, and we talked about how he kind of screens candidates and tries to select who runs for what seats. And he said he's looking for the people that just comes naturally to.
Yep.
He doesn't look to necessarily groom somebody. He wants to see the people that are already out there as community leaders. And when you stepped right into the Civic Association and got right involved, it really just goes to show that he was being genuine in that, because you just naturally fell into it.
I was a natural and I didn't even know it.
Yeah, right.
I'm still trying to figure out whether your wife set you up or not. That's
Well, now,
maybe she bit off more than she could chew.
She definitely has looked back and said, I don't know if that was the best decision. Not making that Civic Association meeting, even when I wasn't feeling well.
The domino effect it had.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
one of the things I really want to highlight is your involvement in your union as well, because we've come to notice that maybe nationally or stereotypically, people think of the Democratic Party as the party that most benefits and represents unions and union interests. But here in Suffolk County, a lot of the Republicans are actually union members or union representatives as well.
Yeah, and that goes for in law enforcement, the building trades, and the Teamsters Union. Recently, our General President, Sean O'Brien, who's a good friend of mine, I knew Sean when he was a truck driver, and he, by just not endorsing the Democratic candidate, made it appear as if he was endorsing Donald Trump, spoke at the Republican convention, and he used to invite me up to New England, and we did have a big joint council convention, and he let me speak because I got to know a lot of people up there. I knew them, but now I spoke in front of them. They supported my campaign, and but he'd always introduce and give me a hard time. And he'd say, we don't usually let Republicans talk up here. I don't know what he's doing in the and I'd always get up there and say the same thing. Sean, thank you for that warm introduction. And I said, but it's really not about the letter after your name. It's about how you treat working men and women.
Right.
And you know what? When he spoke at that Republican convention, he used that line. And then when I saw him, I go, you stole my line. He goes, that was a good one. So,
they do say imitation is the greatest form of flattery, right?
I'm doing okay.
Yeah. So, as you've come into the legislature, initially, when you were elected as a Republican, the Republicans were in the minority.
Yes.
Right? So it's a little bit of a different feel than what it is now, where the Republicans have the majority and you're a presiding officer. So what has that transition kind of been like? What's your experience, kind of coming in as a new legislator in the minority versus now in the majority and the presiding officer in a leadership role?
Yeah, so it's funny how that worked out as well. So I was the 6th Republican elected on the legislature time. There's only 5. I took back a seat that we haven't held, the Republicans, in over 20 years. So I took back that seat, hard work, knocked on 10,000 doors, and really grassroots effort, and got it done. Had a lot of the support among the unions, and so I won by a couple hundred votes. And so I was I was number 6. That next year, John Kennedy was on the legislature, now comptroller, and he was the minority leader. He was elected that next year to be the comptroller. Mm-hmm. They need a minority leader. Once again, nobody else wanted to volunteer. So I
fell right into it again.
It's got me this far in life. Okay, I'll do it. And persevered. And each year, each election, we picked up another seat. And we fought the fight. And there was a lot of fights to fight there. There was a lot going on. The county was in bad fiscal condition, and so we really had to, do what we needed to do to get our views across, even in the minority, and we were able to do that. And then in that following year, in 2019, we picked up another seat, which gave us the ability to hold off on bonding. So they needed our votes for bonding, gave us more power to be able to have more of our agenda put on. So if you want that to support the bonding, we're going to need these things. But we really wanted to make sure that it was a good fiscal place. But we weren't in a good fiscal place. Our sales tax had gone down dramatically. It was really bad. I mean, we had not paid our pension obligations. We owed, $100 million in pension obligations to New York State. And we just said we were amortizing it. That means we're borrowing the money to pay it. We didn't own the Dennison building anymore. We had sold the Dennison building to the Dormitory Authority, and we're leasing it back because we needed to do a one shot. We were doing one shots all over. We were bonding $30,000 a year for something, for a piece of equipment. And we've said, no, we're not doing that anymore. And so unfortunately, COVID came along, and we had done a drastic budget. We knew that we were in a bad place. At the same time, our election was coming up in 2021, and that was the year that the Republicans took over. A red wave came across. We elected Ray Tierney as
just washed everybody out.
It did, yeah. And we went from having just nine on our seats to having 12. I mean, it happened really well. It was 11, then we got our 12th one. But also, we were in the majority. And in that time, it now gave us the ability to say, hey, this is our agenda. This is our fiscal agenda. COVID came along. We drastically cut back on our budgeting and our sales tax expectations. But what we didn't know was during COVID, people weren't out places spending money, but they were home spending money. Mm-hmm. And when the sales tax numbers came in, they were higher than they've ever been before because people had, all that disposable income that came in through the REEF money from the ARPA funds. And so we ended up with more sales tax than we expected. We'd cut back our spending, and it put the county in a really good financial place.
Right.
Additionally, we came in and the government had all these ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan Act, and they used those funds. We probably got well over $600-700 million in ARPA funds. Now, so I sat down with Steve Malone, and he had to sit with me because we were now in the majority. We said, what are we going to do? We rolled up our sleeves together, bipartisan effort to say, let's straighten out, once in a lifetime chance to straighten out these contracts. You guys know your ranks were down. We weren't hiring police officers.
Absolutely.
And I was trying to explain to them, I said, they're still working, but you're paying them overtime, senior guys overtime, because we need them instead of hiring new police officers, taking the benefit of the contract that was negotiated along the years. And he says, we just can't afford to do it. So now we had the ability to hire more police officers. We had the ability to buy back the Dennison building, pay back that high interest loans, like those amortization of our pension funds, pension obligations. All these things, we would sit down, and we didn't have a cloudy day fund. Now we had a $300 million rainy day fund.
Right.
And we had, millions in reserves. We were able to hire the first year that we were in power, and every year since, we've hired over 200 police officers to bolster our ranks, bring it back up. And I think now we're at historic levels of where our staffing should be. That gives us ability to increase the ranks on the detectives, the SOA, and all the other things. We've done great things with the deputy sheriffs, and we finally got a corrections officer's contract that can attract people that can make this, a viable occupation, and that they're coming forward to become, corrections officers as well. So there was a lot of planning that went into this, thoughtfulness, and we are in a very good spot right now because of the things that we did a few years ago when we had the opportunity to do it. So.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad that you highlighted that you and Steve Ballone worked on this together, because we highlight very often how a lot of what helps make Suffolk County work is that bipartisanship and the Republicans and Democrats coming together and looking for solutions that benefit everybody, common sense solutions. It's not the divisiveness that you see in, say, New York City or in the national news, right? Here in Suffolk County, everybody works together. There might be certain ideas that don't always align, and that's kind of why somebody's a Republican and why somebody's a Democrat. But everybody recognizes, for the most part, the same problems, and you guys can work together to come to a solution that, a compromise that benefits everybody.
Yeah, so I think my union background helps.
100%.
I negotiate contracts all the time.
Yep.
You guys are in the union business as well. Our job is to reduce conflict, try and find a middle ground,
yes,
and take down the temperature. And so that's what I try and do, walk into every situation, no matter the yelling, screaming, and everything going on. I find that way to find a middle ground.
Yep.
And I try and understand the other person's side of what they're thinking. And if you can't do that, you'll never be able to get ahead in this business.
Right.
You need to understand what their concerns are, where they're coming from, empathize with them, and say, I understand. But, this is what I'm feeling. Where do we find a middle ground? I, negotiate nationwide contracts in the trucking industry, involved in all kinds of different contract negotiations, regular basis. And from time to time, pulling our members out of the fire and figuring out a way to get them back to work, and even under difficult situations. So I think it's been very helpful in me dealing in a bipartisan manner. And it's not just on the county level. We had a lot of things going on the state level, and we had to deal with where we wanted to get some legislation passed in the state. I worked with former Assemblyman Fred Thiel in this Water Quality Restoration Act to find a middle ground. I didn't think it was fair to what they were proposing. And we were able to sit down. There was a lot of screaming and yelling, and we were holding back on things. And we were being accused of being anti-environment, anti-union, and I'm like, where's this coming from?
Yeah, right. But could be further from the truth.
Yeah, but it is what it is at that time. But we held out, we did the right thing, and we got what the people needed, not what we needed, but we think it was going to benefit the people of Suffolk County. And, so we've had that experience in doing that thing. I was in the minority for a long time. For 8 of my 12 years, I was in the minority. So I know what it was like to be mistreated, run over. And I go out of my way to make sure, even if I disagree with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, I listen to them. And I explain to them why I can or can't do things. And sometimes I just say, I can't do it, and they understand.
Right.
But we get on. I said, well, maybe I can help you next time. And I think if you speak to the minority leader, Jason Richburg, you'll find out that we've had a very good relationship. Our districts are right up on each other. We were both in the town of Babylon. And so we see each other a lot. But we have a mutual respect for each other, regardless of who's in the majority and who's in the minority.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we see it all the time. It's great to be able to almost, watch it in motion where you and Jason might be working together on a project. We had Jason on recently and he took a leadership role when it came to the police reform plan at the time.
Yep.
Right. And that was another bipartisan project where everybody was able to kind of have their voices heard and there was compromise involved. And even the unions had our voices heard. Noel DiGirolamo, our former president, was part of that process. And everything came to a compromise, a solution that I think everybody could feel comfortable with as a path forward to address, the issues we were facing at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a difficult time. I was on those meetings. It was during COVID, so it was Zoom meetings.
Yeah, a lot of Zoom meetings.
Till 1 o'clock in the morning, and then and I got zoomed out, I was just so tired of it,
I'm still zoomed out.
Yeah, you have to always be on your game on Zoom because you're always on the camera, you know what I mean? So if you make a face, everybody sees it,
Right.
So you try and put your poker face on no matter what's being said,
Yeah. And honestly, Zoom meetings have obviously become very much part of the norm, but I still prefer that personal face-to-face across the table meeting because it's easier to get, the temperature check of the room that way. It's easier to kind of read between the lines and understand what the real priorities are versus what, might be a secondary, a third, tier issue as far as, somebody you're talking to and communicating with and what their interests really are.
Yeah. And there's some 4-hour Zoom meetings that really start to weigh you down. So I'm glad that's behind us. I think it's a useful tool now if you just want to get on and use it. And you can't always get face to face, but on a limited basis, I think it works. But
speaking of temperature check, though, I know we talked about you being the presiding officer. At what point, during that whole, we talked about going through 2019, 2021, and then you guys take over the majority. At what point did you have a thought that maybe you could be the presiding officer? Was there any discussions going on? Can you just talk to us about how that played out?
Yeah, so I was the minority leader, but it's never a given. This is a crazy business.
You don't want to take it for granted.
You don't want to take it for granted, but I've done a lot of good things. I think I've put a good face on the Republican Party. I bring a lot of things to the table. I've always seen as that person that's in the middle that brings people together instead of dividing them. And I think that's an important part of what, the presiding officer needs to do. You need to make difficult decisions, but you want people to feel like they've been included in them. And I've done that as a minority leader, leading my caucus. We've had things, especially where we had the ability to block bonding when needed. I said, listen, we need to go in our heels at this point. And so I thought I had I was a front runner but you never know. And at the end of the day, they had the confidence in me to give me that position. And it's something you have to get elected to every year. And we added new members, after that.
You have to bring them along. It's almost like herding the sheep, right?
Herding the cats is my favorite expression. Yes. And it's not easy sometimes, but it is what it is, and everyone's an elected official. So everyone's got their own opinions and their opinion is more important than yours. And so you have to understand that and you're not always going to agree with everything, so there's some of us that are in the middle, some a little bit more, to the right, some a little more to the left and
to find a way to make it all work, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm the referee, the umpire, and the mediator,
Right. And throughout all that, you find the common threads, right? There's certain things that we all agree are problems and issues that we can work together to find solutions to. And one of the things I love about Suffolk County is that our legislature isn't scared to try to think outside the box and isn't scared to make changes to local laws to help us address issues here in the county, right? So we've had a lot of issues with the illegal street racing, the street takeovers, and the Suffolk County Legislature was very open-minded and quick to address those issues by helping fund and make sure the police department had the manpower to put together the street takeover task force, right? We changed some local laws to allow for us to impound those vehicles and, destroy them or make very high fees so that there was a real deterrent for these people to risk losing their cars because maybe they can't afford to get them back. So I think it's great that the legislature has been able to give us more tools to combat these issues.
I feel like Suffolk County has really become like an area where people want to move to, or even visit in the summer. I always say Long Island summer is the best summer. There's so much stuff to do out here. And I think that's great for business and it's great for government too, because with the sales tax, like you said, when people are spending money out here, our government and our people are going to get more out of that.
Yeah. 35% of our sales tax comes from people that don't live in Suffolk County.
Oh, that's
a great number.
high number.
Yep. And that is the biggest source of our revenue in terms of funding our government. It's over 50% of where we get our revenue beyond grants and other things.
Yeah.
So I feel like part of that is the public safety aspect of it. You go around New York, and I know like Nassau's pretty much on the same page that we're on, but you go to places like the city, and like I grew up there, and I don't even want to go back there. Like I don't want to go to the city to spend any money. Like I don't want to be there at all. I'd much rather be out here.
Right.
And that has a lot to do with what our legislature has done and given our police officers the tools and resources to make Suffolk safe.
Yeah. So I've got two things that I want to do before I leave. I'm starting to have the clock is my legislative clock is ticking.
Out. Right.
I am terming out. I'm not leaving on because I have to or I want to. Those are the rules and that's the way it's going to be. Mm-hmm. But there's some things I've been putting off trying to get done. And the two pieces of legislation that I've just filed are going to show up in the next committee cycle. The first is about e-bikes and those scooters.
Right.
I mean, I can't go anywhere without people saying, what are you doing about this?
Yep.
I walked out of my office on Wellwood Avenue and I just stepped down the sidewalk. I almost got run over by a scooter, on someone on the sidewalk. And because you don't even hear them coming.
Right.
The other day I'm driving in the car and all these cars now, there's advanced stuff, the warning lights.
Yeah, right. All the beeping.
All the beeping. So I'm coming down my block and all of a sudden cars are coming the other way. It's nighttime. And they're like slowing down, like something's wrong. And all of a sudden, before I could see it, the car started beeping. There was a kid on one of those scooters, the sit-on scooters, going down the middle of the road with all dressed in all black. You couldn't see anything, no lights and all nothing. So the car saw it before I did, and it's really become a problem. They're running people off the road. They're going on our sidewalks. They're driving haphazardly. We had this real big problem with the quads and the off-road bikes.
Right.
So we introduced legislation that I think you spoke about along with the street takeover stuff where we increase the fines and we're going to take over. We're going to be doing the same thing with those e-bikes, those scooters, and all those other things. You shouldn't be riding them. The state law says you shouldn't ride them unless you're under 16.
Right.
We're going to figure out a way. I spoke to the police commissioner. He wants to be able to find a way to be able to, enforce that. It's not easy. We don't like chasing people and
right.
So, but we're going to figure out a way to do it. People will come into us all the time and say, what are you going to do about it? I'm sure your members hear about it.
Yep.
And we want to give them the tools like we did before to be able to make Suffolk County a safer place to be, not only for the pedestrians, for the people driving the cars, but for these people that are riding these e-bikes and scooters in a reckless manner. So we're going to increase the fines. Second time you do it, we're going to take it away from you.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear because that is one of those issues that I do hear about from time to time, and I witness it myself. Anybody who's out there driving witnesses it themselves. And you hate to say, well, there's very little we could do about it right now, but at least the county is, and you are, putting together legislation to give us the tools we need locally to address this local issue. I know it came up in a precinct community meeting recently.
Yep.
And, talk about the bipartisan communication. Even Rebecca Cassay was bringing that up to us. I forget if it was on the show or off the air, but she was talking about some of these scooters and everything taking over the roadways and being dangerous for everybody, including the operators of the scooters themselves.
Yeah, there's going to be safety laws. There's age requirements. They need to be enforced the same way we brought you the legislation to the police department to, the tools you need to be able to do your job, such as the street takeovers and the problems you have with the quads and the off-road bikes. So hopefully that will be something that look back and say, we did something about it,
right,
and allow the police to be able to do their job.
Right. Another good win before you walk out the door.
And then I have one more that it's with the police department as well. And Nassau County passed a law about where is a safety zone
the
for
halo.
The halo.
I love it.
So that bill is filed, and it's going to replicate the one in Nassau because I don't mind stealing stuff that worked pretty good over there.
Right.
And so that's going to be the next thing where people can't be in your face and while you're trying to do your job and your members and our first responders as well. The people in the ambulances, whatever. We don't need people getting in the way.
It's a safety issue for both the police officer and the public. And the public doesn't realize that. They just think that they're getting a cool video or whatnot. But it really puts them in a bad spot when a police officer is dealing with somebody and then they're getting way too close and maybe the officer doesn't realize that they're there or the person that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm, as I say, going through the line. I'm not throttle him back. We have an election right now. As soon as that election's over, that's my focus, to try and not only maintain but grow our majority, because I think we've done great work as Republicans here in Suffolk County. I want to keep that going, build on that legacy that I've done over my term in office, and keep it going.
Yeah. Speaking on your legacy and your departure, I know, like, obviously you're leaving a big legacy behind. And do you have any like conversations with Chairman Jesse Garcia of like who might take your place as the presiding officer? And then also, I know RJ Renna, we've seen him out a lot, and he's doing a great job campaigning. We look forward to seeing him. And can you give us a little bit about RJ Renna as well?
RJ's a great kid. I can call him a kid because his father, me and his father, the same age.
Man.
And I have known him for a very long time. He actually is on the village board, and he is the deputy mayor of Lindenhurst right now. And I was the deputy mayor of Lindenhurst when I became the county legislature. Very thoughtful. He's very dynamic. He helped redesign that downtown in the village of Lindenhurst. Before I left as a member of the village board there, we set it up so we could do that rezoning of, we brought in development, 261 transportation-oriented development housing right across from the railroad station, revitalized our downtown.
Yeah.
All right. RJ was on the board. He helped get that zoning done. For us, it was a plan, but he got that plan across the finish line, brought in all these businesses to Lindenhurst. It is a thriving downtown. He's going to be, very good with economic development, smart young man, and he's just he's going to do really well, and he's a friend of the men and women of law enforcement and the working men and women of Suffolk County. He's seen as been successful for me, but he's not just copying me. That's who he is, and he's going to do a great job.
We look forward to it. He's going to have like a little bit of a different perspective than a lot of the other people in the legislature. I think he's a lot younger too, in that business background of dealing with all the businesses in Lindenhurst. I think it's going to be a huge. I mean, it's hard to fill your shoes, but I think that you picked the right person to try to at least. Yeah,
and look, it's. Am I sorry that I have to go? Yeah, but you know what? I think the term limits work. Bring in, like you said, bring in new ideas, and RJ is going to look back, and other people are going to look back and say how we ran this legislature. The next presiding officer, I think he's going to look back, and he or she is going to look back and say, hey, this is. That's worked pretty good. Let's, not what would Kevin do at this time, but, they've seen how I run meetings, how I include people in different things, and it's constantly changing. I think they're going to pick up on that.
And like you said, you want to keep the momentum going. And I think that's very important on your legacy as well, beyond the time that you spend here. I think past that, you want to leave this county in a better place than where you got it. And that includes down the road, you want the next person to have the same vision and the same characteristics like that they care so much about it that they want to be better, and the person after them should do better than they did, basically.
Absolutely. And I came into this with a background, not just a union background. I come from a police family. My father was a New York City police detective. I retired out of the 101 in Far Rockaway. My other brother spent some time in East New York. Then he came out to Nassau County. He retired about 7 or 8 years ago. He was a PBA delegate for Nassau County as well. My other brother, Justin, is a retired NYPD sergeant, worked with the intelligence division, and now my son is a second grade detective working in financial crimes in New York City. So I tell people from the day I was born till now, I've been in a police family and continue to be. So,
and your son's been having a very successful career out there. Like you said, he's second grade detective now, so he's gotten promoted within the detective ranks, and he's worked on a couple of high profile cases. He's done a lot of good work out there.
Yeah, I love bragging about him, but he's the if anyone saw the Netflix series Inventing Anna, he was the one that got this case. It was nothing. They thought she was skipping out some hotel bills and some restaurant bills, and he filed the money where Deutsche Bank and other banks were being defrauded of several, millions of dollars.
Right, it all added up.
Dollars, and he was the one that filed it and got her arrested. So.
And it's amazing how these financial crimes now that these detectives investigate, how much a couple $100 here, a couple $1,000 there, how it does add up over time if nobody's looking for it. Yeah. Right. I mean, like you said, over the course of time, she frauded banks out of millions of dollars.
Yeah. Yeah. And he got the conviction, on the bank fraud part of it, which was important. They built a good case, and, he had a lot of help along the way. But yeah, so that was his the one he was most notably for. He got on Jake Tapper's United States of Scandal recently, so he got to play himself. Obviously, in Netflix series,
that's cool.
They get to play himself. But they do a lot of work each and every day. They have him working a lot now on these ghost guns and the gun cases. They want them focusing on that. So it's the same type of work, because people are hiding stuff and they're doing so. They're really good at finding stuff like the detectives in Suffolk County are as well, and all over, and digging in deeper, and finding it out. And it's benefiting the people of not just New York City, but Nassau and Suffolk as well, if those guns are out there. So
crime evolves over time, and the police department has to evolve with it.
Right. Yep. Exactly. The criminals evolve. The police department have to be able to come up with new ideas and tactics to be able to combat these new kinds of crimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see it. Look at that NBA scandal.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
And he was somewhat involved in that, helping out with the arrests and stuff, and he was aware of it, and after it hit, because he won't tell me what's going on. But they said, "Well, was this you?" Because I just helped out with it. But I'm like, we don't pay these guys enough money.
I know. I agree 100%.
They're scamming so many people because a lot of people are gambling on these games and they know the outcome. They know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. It is interesting. So, obviously, us being police officers, our show strongly focuses on public safety. One of the things I do want to highlight is that, all the funding and all the fiscal responsibility you brought to the county. You started off in the Village of Lindenhurst. You balanced the budget there, operating a surplus. Here in Suffolk County, you came into a very tough fiscal situation. You helped balance that budget, and now we're operating in a very healthy status. Part of that fiscal responsibility has led to properly funding the police department. And sometimes you hear these horror stories about defunding the police in some areas. Here in Suffolk County, the police department is properly funded. And we've been able to see the hirings with, more police officers. You already alluded to it. We used to be at lows and overtime was through the roof. Now we're at, proper manpower levels, and being able to hire those police officers has led to being able to promote detectives to investigate these white collar crimes, right? These new kinds of crimes that are coming up, and promote into the supervisory ranks, because obviously, you need supervisors on this job too. So the proper funding has been huge in being able to let us do our jobs, because if we don't have that manpower, we don't have those conditions units that can go address some of these community conditions like the ATVs taking over William Floyd Parkway, or, whatever other community conditions happen to be going on, because anybody available to work is got to just be responding to 911 calls.
Yeah. So I'm a beneficiary of that.
Yeah.
So I was telling you before, last night's about 9:30 at night, right? I'm getting ready to call it a night, had a long day, long night. And so all of a sudden I get a call from my son-in-law. They live down the street from us. And all of a sudden he goes, "We just called the ambulance. Collins is having a seizure." And he's 18 months old. So you're like, so we jump in the car, run down there. And just as I'm getting out of my car, police car pulls up. First Precinct, Chris Maloney, got to give him a shout out. We'd show up at the same time. He goes running there, beats the ambulance there. Take, all you guys trained EMTs. One of the best things we do in Suffolk County is our training academy. Yeah. And, everyone comes out as an EMT. Guys keep them up, and took control of the situation. Fire department came with the ambulance, and everything's fine. He just had a high fever and it caused some problems, but he was released that night. So, But I'm just saying. So personally, I see the benefit of having more police on the street, because I live 12 houses away, and he was there at the same time I was. And, I didn't have lights and sirens, but I probably, I drove pretty quick,
Right. If we don't have the proper manpower, that same sector operator might have been stuck on some other call somewhere.
Yeah. And right. Exactly right. And he was just there because he was on patrol, doing his job, responded right away. And I can tell you, there's a lot of Chris Maloney's out there doing their jobs.
And that training is really critical, though, too. It's invaluable that most of us, when we're all EMTs, basically. So it sets us apart from some of the other police departments that they don't have that same training. Yeah. We can start working on a patient and then hand it over to the EMTs when they come in and work together with them.
Look, I'm good at saying a few words, balancing budgets and doing all those kinds of things, bringing people together. But when it's an emergency like that, I'm like, this is not my area of expertise. And it's good to see someone come in there, had the training and had the composure, comes in there, because it's not your kid, your grandkid. So he sees what he's doing, stabilize them, everything's good.
Yeah. It's great to hear. And I want to just echo what Tanner just said. This is, all the police officers out here being EMTs is very unique to the Suffolk County Police Department. I had almost 9 years in the NYPD before I came out to Suffolk. And when I found out we were all going to be EMT certified instead of just certified first responders, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then when I learned about the MedCat team and how we basically have combat medics out there on the road that not only help serve and protect our members, but also the public. When there's a bad car accident, there's a combat medic responding to that scene to help save that life.
It's a great program, you know, and Dr. Voswinkle, who's the medical director for the department, and he just does a great job of innovating and working with the police department to find out what the needs are, listening to the public, and besides being the chief trauma surgeon at Stony Brook University. So he's been very good to all of us.
It's a great team out here. We have a lot of great programs. It's really fun and exciting to be a part of.
Yep, sure. Yeah. And I'm glad to be a part of that whole process.
So Kevin, we know you're a busy guy. You got another event to get to. But I'm happy you were able to come on this show. It's unfortunate that you're terming out. You've been an asset to this county. Hopefully there's something in store for you in the future. I don't know what that is yet, but hopefully you don't just disappear and you're around and do something to help continuing serve the public.
I feel the same way, and we'll see what happens. We'll get through this election cycle right now. It's less than a week away, and after that, we'll start thinking about what I'm going to do in the future. But I like to be able to continue to make a difference in people's lives. I've still got some gas in the tank, and I think I've got something to bring to this county. And as I said before, I like to think that I left this county legislature and this county in a better place than I found it. And not quite ready to leave it yet, but we'll see what happens. It's crazy business. But I'd like to come back on here and make that announcement.
Yeah, that'd be great. Right. That'd be great. We'd love to have you on.
Right, we appreciate all the support you've given us throughout the years, and we appreciate the friendship.
Thank you, everything you guys have done for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kevin.
All right,
appreciate it.
Take care.
Yeah.